You may be seated. A few weeks ago when Emily emailed me and asked me when she could deliver the next sermon, I looked at the calendar, I said, how about the 29th? And she said, sure. And I didn't know Cantor Sharon was going to be away and she was going to be reading so much Torah this morning. So thank you, Emily, for pulling double duty this morning. And we all look forward to hearing what you have to say. It's always so beautiful. So it's my pleasure and honor to introduce Emily Zeman.
Thank you, Rabbi Cohen. And for the record, it's actually kind of nice to do both because then I get to learn more about the Torah as I'm reading it. So it goes hand in hand, all things considered. All right. To me, the Mourner's Kaddish is one of the most special moments of the service. It's intriguing because it juxtaposes death and holiness. It's a minute or two of collective grief when people stand and pray together to honor the ones they've lost, and the congregation prays with them, wishing them strength from their seats. We create a spiritually powerful and unified moment when we recognize our combined loss. We stand together in pain and in prayer. The concept is only amplified during the Yizkor service, especially Yizkor on Yom Kippur. The massive group of people mourning is just as beautiful as it is heartbreaking. There's a similar juxtaposition in this week's double portion, Acharemot Kedoshim. Acharemot means after the death, because God gave Moses instructions after the tragic deaths of Aaron's sons. And Kedoshim is the plural for holy, as God outlined a number of mitzvot for us to follow in order to be holy like God. Though the titles of this week's portions, death and holiness, seem like opposites outside of the context of the Torah, I believe they're counterparts. I've found that we feel the most alive, the most divine, when we're closest to death. It's when we're facing our most painful losses, or when we're reminded of them, that we have the greatest appreciation for life and all it offers. I understood that feeling firsthand a few years ago on Simchas Torah, when I received the honor of Kalat Breshit. I distinctly remember walking down the center aisle, enveloped by the chuppah overhead, Cantor Sharon's graceful davening echoing with a heartbeat throughout the sanctuary. It was an experience of pure holiness, and it felt especially profound because of the timing. Someone I loved had recently received a life-threatening medical diagnosis. I'm not going to name exactly who out of respect for their privacy, but thankfully they got to know about my achievement before, God forbid, their life could have been cut short. The fear of losing a loved one made me feel incredibly grateful that we got to share in that day. And I was just as thankful for the embrace of the women I admired who were walking with me, for the presence of the congregants praying with me from the pews, and for a mystical, inexplicable force connecting us all. It was in contrast to the darkness and fragility I felt that this experience gleamed with light. It gave me hope, and it gave me strength. With every step towards the ark, I felt closer to something divine. Death, or near death, is like an alarm clock. It forcefully yanks us awake so we can see the world differently. It gives us the chance to act with urgency and intention, with newfound appreciation of what we have and who we have while we still have them. Maury Schwartz, a man dying of ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, sums it up nicely in the best-selling memoir, Tuesdays with Maury. He tells his former student, "Because I know my time is almost done, I am drawn to nature like I'm seeing it for the first time." It's so true. With this mindset, the grass on your front lawn stands taller. The rhythmic honk at the intersection of Livingston Ave and Mount Pleasant becomes almost laughable. The sunrise seems extra special as it peeks between leafy trees. Harrowing experiences, as horrible as they are, help us relish the everyday in a renewed way. Nobody sees it this way immediately, though. Initially, in the face of death, or after a loved one leaves us, the world feels small. We isolate, retreat into ourselves. Like Aaron and the silence after his son's passing, we get quiet. We can't make sense of it. The loss leaves us at a loss for words. Aaron could have remained silent. Instead, he saw how precious life was, and he acted upon God's instructions. He performed his priestly rituals. He sacrificed the 2 goats, and he made advanced preparations for Yom Kippur. Aaron brought himself back into the world in hopes that it would lead him to holiness, to Kedushah. He opened his heart to the support of a congregation of mourners. After the deaths, they created spiritually strong moments together by participating in the world. It's because Aaron took a step forward out of himself that he drew closer to holiness. As hard as it is to see at first, loss invites us to turn pain into something positive. Acharimot Kedoshim. After death, holiness. The process is like our vision in the darkness. First, there's nothing but a black void. But with time, our eyes adjust. Our pupils open wider, and we begin to see vague forms and figures and light. We realize how great a gift it is to wake up each morning and live. We just have to let ourselves see it and let our hearts feel it. Once we allow ourselves to pursue holiness, we can start making ourselves whole once again. It could start with something as simple as performing a mitzvah from Parshat Kedoshim, like observing Shabbat or loving the stranger as yourself. Or you could share a fond memory of a person you're missing with a friend. You could just smile with that same toothy grin you inherited from your mom, and you'd be bringing your essence back to life. On a side note, maybe that's why we say that people pass. Though they're no longer physically on this earth, they've passed themselves on to us. They live on through us and our smiles and our good deeds. Our existence keeps them alive. It's in the process of performing mitzvot, telling stories, and participating in the world that we begin to rebuild. As we grieve together, for we all feel grief in one way or another, we can pursue something greater. Death is not an end, and grief is never ending. We're in a constant state of acharimot, of after death. As devastating as the aftermath is, it's kind of beautiful too. There's something incredible about finding a tiny moment of levity when the world feels like it's crumbling. Like in the mourner's Kaddish, words can't describe the feeling of sharing that moment with people who feel similar pain. With each tragic loss, we have the chance and the choice to find flickers of hope once again. We don't need to wait for a big honor like Kalat Breshit or the Yom Kippur Yizkor service to step outside of our troubled minds. Every day brings a juxtaposition of tragic and uplifting events, of bitter and sweet feelings, of death and holiness. We constantly have a chance to flip the narrative, to see a simple sunrise as an ordinary miracle. It's in that juxtaposition that I believe God challenges us to see the world in a new light. There's so much to learn amidst loss, and you are never alone in your grief. You've got a whole congregation of people beside you right now. I hope that no matter your proximity or distance to death, that you continue to step outside of yourself and embrace others. Life is short, and every day is teeming with opportunity. May we continuously awaken ourselves from darkness and open our eyes to the divine that's around us and within us. Shabbat Shalom.